Thank you. So I'm a third-year graduate student in the FORS group. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about a synthetic tool that our group has developed to actually control how we make our polymers. And by being able to control the structure of our polymers, we actually can get a fine handle on polymer properties, as well as polymer processing and things like that. So one thing that I think everyone is familiar with is how important polymers are in everyday life. So plastics are everywhere. So to prove that, if you guys have something in your possession that's made up of plastic, just hold it up in the air real quick. Yeah, oh, everyone's holding up a plastic fork. Yep, so the glasses you're wearing are a good example. The shoes that you're wearing are made of a polymeric rubber. The chairs you're sitting on, clothing, purses, this remote that I'm holding right now. So everything is made of, you encounter hundreds of polymers on a day-to-day basis. And in fact, 300 million tons of polymers are produced every single year. And so that's equivalent to 900 Empire State Buildings. But what I think is actually more shocking, I actually read this the other day, 300 million tons is actually equivalent to the mass of the entire population of the world. So that is how much plastic we are producing every single year. And yes, there's a lot of talk about trying to reduce the amount of plastic and such. But I do want to also talk about the reason why we're producing so much plastic is because they're so incredibly important. So aside from things like storage containers, and aside from things like glasses and shoes, they're found in medicinal drug delivery applications. They're being researched for things like electronics. So imagine in the future, you can take a TV, roll it up, stick it in your backpack, and it's fully functional. So flexible electronics are going to be made from conductive polymers. So polymers and plastics are used in everything, even in military essentials, so bulletproof vests, things like that. And so what our group does is try to better understand how we can control polymer function by controlling the structure. And so to better understand how that works, we need to kind of think about how a polymer is made in the first place. So plastics themselves start with small molecules. And when you have a bunch of small molecules in solution, all you have to do is throw in some type of initiating species, and then you start to grow out your polymer chain. Now the thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times you can't control the chain length of your polymer. And so you end up getting a distribution of chain lengths. And what's important to keep in mind is that a longer chain typically will have better properties because they're stronger and they can entangle better, whereas a shorter chain might be easier to process or melt down. But trying to control the distribution as well as the distribution shape is something that polymer chemists do all the time. And so what our group does is we've actually developed a method where we can not only control how broad the distribution is, we can actually control the shape as well. So if we want a shape where we have a lot of larger chains in solution, we can do that. And on the other end, we can also do the opposite where we have a bunch of smaller chains, and we can do that. And the reason why that's important is because now not only can we control structure, but we can also control processing when we think about how a polymer is processed in industry. So think about, for example, how you would make a chair, right? You make your polymer, you start with a bunch of small beads. And to take that and turn it into a chair, you have to melt it down with a lot of energy and a lot of heat into some type of extruder. And then once you melt it down, you inject it into a chair or into a mold, and then you have to let it cool down, pop out your chair, and then you get your material. But the thing to understand is like, okay, so if I want to make sure I sit on the chair and it doesn't break, I need chains that are long enough. But if I want to make it easy to process so I don't have to heat it too much, I need shorter chains. So you end up having this inverse relationship between polymer properties and processing. And so what our group does is by being able to actually control the distribution shape and get a diverse range of distributions, what we're able to do is get a fine handle on both the processing as well as the properties. And the reason why this is cool is because now I can just take any polymer sample and say, okay, I want a polymer sample that is easy to process, and maybe I can use 30% less material and still get out the same chair that doesn't break when I sit on it. So with that, I want to just thank my group, because they're a fantastic group, as well as my collaborator, who's in another group in chemistry, Omar. And we do have a Twitter and an Instagram that you guys are welcome to follow if you're more interested about what we do. So thank you.